So what are some of the things that can happen to rental properties? Well, in the short term, you can have a decline in values and rents. And real estate is it's a stamina game. It's a stamina game. Who could stay the longest? Last man standing, right? When things go great, everybody's a genius in real estate. Right? When things go bad, well, we'll see who's smart. We'll see how smart they are. Okay? That's what Uber's for. Some of you got that. Some of you will get it later. So you can have a temporary decline in values and rent. You can have a change in supply or demand. So if you have too much supply, too many houses, and if you have a lot of houses, that means your vacancy rate's going to go up. That means you're going to have to drop your rents. Or if you have a drop in demand, people moving out versus people moving in. Or people buying versus renting. Was anybody a landlord in 2003, 4, 5? Remember how tough it was to be a landlord back then? Because there was a change in demand. Why rent when you can buy? 1% loan for the first 10 minutes. Option arm, pick your payment. Let's see, full payment, half payment, interest only, negative payment. That sounds good, negative payment, no payment. I'll make no payment at all, my balance will go up. But if the mortgage broker promised me I could refinance me into a 30-year mortgage next year. Too bad his phone number's disconnected. Supply, though, I think we have on our side. Because if you're in the low-end market, what we call starter homes, particularly, or the low rent properties, they're just not building them anymore. Nobody builds. It's not profitable for a developer to build a development in this market, where houses are selling for $250 or $300. It's not profitable because the hard cost of the development, the purchase of the land, paving the roads, putting in the sewer lines, and all that stuff. The rest is just 2x4s and drywall. Why make a 1,500 square foot house when you can make a 4,000 square foot house and make a whole lot more money? Does that make sense? So the marginal cost of making a bigger house is nominal at that point. That's a good thing for us as landlords, because if you've bought up the supply of low-end homes, of those 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranches, built in the 50s and 60s, they're not making those anymore. Supply-wise, we have nothing to worry about. So whatever you can get your hands on in terms of those types of houses, in our market, I think you're going to do very, very well. Unexpected vacancies or repairs, just like the bumper sticker says, right? Do I have to say it? Blank happens. Right? I know the vacancy rate is 5%, but is it possible if you have 10 rentals and have 50% vacancy in 1 month? Yes. Yes. Could you have a roof collapse from too much snow? Yes. Could you have a drive-by shooting? Yes. Could you have a meth lab? Yes. Could you have the front door kicked in by an ex-boyfriend violating a restraining order, and the girlfriend can't afford to replace the door, so you have to pay for it? Yes. I'm just telling you my whole life story here. All these things happen to me. All these things happen to me. So, you got it. Those are some of the risks that you have to think, you have to consider when investing in real estate, because it's not like the stock market. If you put out 100,000 in the stock market and it goes down to zero, okay, you lost 100,000. But if you're trading on margin, or if you're buying real estate, that not only could the values go down and the rents go down, but you have to make a mortgage payment that you're committed on for 30 years with the bank personally, with a guarantee. Or you can get a lawsuit against you, or something like that. Or the city can fine you for violating the code or something like that. You understand? So it's like an alligator. It could eat you if you're not careful. Property casualties. You can have a tenant lawsuit. There's all types of things that can happen. They say in real estate, there's what you know, what you don't know, and then what you don't know that you don't know. And that's usually when you're in front of a judge. I didn't know that. I didn't even know that I didn't know that. Some judge is explaining to you that you don't know that you don't know. So a lot of those things are risks that potentially could happen to you, and that's the CLEAR formula, CLEAR. To lower your risk, here's some tips I think for investing that will lower your risk as a real estate investor or landlord. Number one, smaller houses, I think, are preferred to bigger houses. Not 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom houses, but 3 bedrooms. My experience has been that a 5-bedroom house doesn't rent for 40% more than a 3-bedroom house, but costs 3 times as much in carpet and paint when they leave. Does that make sense? So like 3 seems to be like that sweet spot, like 3-bedroom, 2-bath, seems to be that sweet spot. In apartments, maybe 2 bedrooms are usually better than 1 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms are almost excess because not that many families rent 3-bedroom apartments, but 2 bedrooms seems to be the preferred. Appreciating areas, so even if you have negative cash flow, well, at least you can make it all back on the appreciation when you sell, right? Financed well, it's almost become the point where debt is not debt anymore. If it's a low interest rate, it's an asset. A 30-year fixed mortgage at 5% is technically debt. But if we presume that interest rates will go up in the future to higher than 5%, then that debt becomes what? An asset. Because if rents go up and your payment remains the same, you understand how that becomes an asset to you, okay? As opposed to a 20-year loan or 15. I don't particularly like 15-year notes. You could buy on a 30-year mortgage and then make extra principal payments if your goal is to pay it off sooner, but at least you're not forced to make that payment every month, and your cash flow statement will look much better if you're trying to apply for another loan. Okay? Stuff that's easy to find is generally good. Even on busy streets, it's funny. People say, "Oh, I wouldn't buy a house on a main street. That's not a good investment." I do not concur. I've had some of the best rental success with houses on main streets that are strictly rental properties. If I know if I go to sell it one day, being on a busy street is a negative, right? But being on a busy street also means it's never vacant. Because you can put a sign out that says for rent, and 2 seconds you get a tenant. In fact, I had one on the corner of Montview and Havana. Well, one of the negatives was about that is it was a crappy property, and I got a lot of code violations every single day because everyone could see it. But the good part was I had a for rent sign that I kept there all year long. I said to the tenant, "Listen, I'll give you a $20 discount on rent if you let me keep the for rent sign up," because I would rent all the other properties in the area off that sign. It was like a billboard. And then it worked so well that I got a black and yellow bumblebee banner 8 feet wide by 2 feet and hung it on the chain link fence. It said "property for rent" and the phone number. And the phone was ringing off the hook for tenants that filled all the other properties. And finally the city said, "No, that's commercial signage, you can't do that." But boy, I got away. That was good while it lasted. That's right. That's right. And what I look for is what's called the wob in the mob near the blob. This is in my book, Defensive Real Estate Investing, which you may like if you want to prepare yourself for what you think may be a decline in the market. The right house is the wob in the mob near the blob. The wob is the house that's the worst on the block. Always look for the cheaper house in a better neighborhood than the best house in a cheaper neighborhood. Does that make sense? You don't want to be the king of the slum, like Fred G. Sanford. If you buy one of those properties, I'll call you a big dummy. So look for the cheapest house in the mob. The mob is the median price for the city or below, or just below that. That's like the sweet spot of houses. So if median price is, what is it these days, $450 in Denver? So under $450 would be the sweet spot and buy the cheapest house on the block. Does that make sense? Or the smallest house, or whatever it is. Now, you don't want to go too far under. In Denver, I don't think there's any neighborhood you can go too low in, because there's really not any D, E, F neighborhoods. In Detroit, there is. But if the median price there, I don't know what it is, let's say for argument's sake it's 150, I would probably buy between 100 and 150. That'd be a sweet spot. So for Denver, if it's 450, like 350 to 450 is a sweet spot. Near the blob. What's the blob? Wow. You guys don't remember the movie, The Blob, Steve McQueen? The big thing from outer space, that big blobby thing that ate everything in its path and got bigger and bigger? Well, look for areas where the blob is happening, where your neighborhood gets eaten by the blob. Like the example before I said, near Fitzsimmons, Stapleton, and Lowry, those were blobs. And they have infected the areas around it and eaten them up and raised values and property rents in the area with its path. In fact, North Aurora 80010 is no longer North Aurora. What are they calling it these days? Fitzsimmons. Fitzsimmons, they're calling it. That's a joke. Because it's near the near an employer that employs over 5,000 people, right? So that's the hospital was a blob. That's why I bought in that area. So if worst comes to worst, you can't always buy in the up and coming areas. Buy around the up and coming areas, and hopefully, like another blob in town was the light rail, right? Remember when the light rail went in? Now, personally, I think the light rail is a joke, but a lot of people think that there's value in being walkable to the light rail.